Picture a country where women walk to work in the morning, capable and educated, passing empty benches where old men used to sit, where universities graduate more women than men year after year, and nobody questions it anymore because it's been this way for decades, where dating apps show the same faces for months and wedding invitations arrive less and less frequently, where the silence in apartments at night isn't peaceful, it's heavy. This is Lithuania, a small Baltic nation tucked between Poland and Latvia, where the numbers tell a story that nobody wants to say out loud. There simply aren't enough men. Not enough men who are healthy, not enough who stay, not enough who are present, emotionally or physically, not enough who are alive. The statistics are stark. For every 100 women in Lithuania, there are only 85 men. Among those aged 25 to 50, the prime years for partnership and family, the gap widens even further. In some cities, single women outnumber single men by nearly 2 to 1. In rural areas, the ratio can be even more extreme. But this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about what happens when an entire generation of women grows up knowing that the math doesn't work in their favor. When being successful, educated, and independent doesn't guarantee you'll find someone to share your life with. When loneliness becomes so common that it stops being remarkable and starts being normal. From the outside, Lithuania looks like a success story. It's a member of the European Union, has a thriving tech sector, and boasts some of the highest rates of female education in Europe. Its capital, Vilnius, with cobblestone streets and Baroque architecture, has been named a cultural capital. The old town glows amber at dusk. Cafes serve excellent coffee. The economy is growing. But beneath that postcard image is a quiet crisis. One that plays out in empty apartments, silent phone screens, and the slow realization that the future many women imagine partnership, family, companionship may never arrive. Not because they're not trying, but because the men simply aren't there. It didn't happen overnight. The male shortage in Lithuania is the result of decades of overlapping crises, each one carving away at the male population like waves against a cliff. The first wave came with the fall of the Soviet Union. When independence arrived in 1990, so did economic collapse. Factories that had employed entire towns closed their doors. State farms failed. Jobs disappeared. And men, especially young men with families to support, began to leave. They went to the UK, to Ireland, to Norway, to Germany, anywhere that offered work and wages. Construction sites in London, warehouses in Oslo, farms in rural England. The work was hard, often degrading, but it paid. And so they went, promising their wives, their girlfriends, their mothers that it was temporary. But temporary became permanent. The economy back home didn't recover fast enough. The wages abroad were too good. Men who left in their 20s are now in their 40s and 50s, with new lives, new partners, and new children in other countries. They didn't abandon Lithuania by choice, they were pushed out by necessity. But the result is the same. They're gone. Some return for holidays, sending money and photos of the lives they built elsewhere. Others never come back at all, their names fading from local memory like weathered paint on a signpost. Whole villages now have streets with more empty houses than families. The second wave is darker. Lithuania has one of the highest rates of alcohol-related deaths in Europe. Heavy drinking isn't just a habit here, it's woven into the social fabric. Celebrations, grief, boredom, tradition, all reasons to drink. And men, especially working-class men, bear the brunt of this crisis. Alcoholism here isn't the Hollywood version, dramatic rock bottoms and tearful interventions. It's mundane, it's functional, until it isn't. It's the man who drinks every evening after work for decades. It's the father whose liver quietly fails in his 50s. It's the husband whose heart gives out at 43. Walk through a Lithuanian cemetery and you'll see it. Rows of graves with photographs of men who died in their 30s, 40s, 50s, heart disease, liver failure, accidents, suicide. The causes vary, but the pattern doesn't. Lithuania has one of the lowest male life expectancies in the European Union. Women live, on average, 10 years longer than men. 10 years. That's not a gap, it's a chasm. And it means that even in marriages that last, many women spend the final decade or more of their lives alone. Entire communities of widows have emerged, women who gather, who help raise grandchildren, who fill the silence left behind by the men who should have grown old beside them. The third wave is quieter, but just as devastating: disconnection. Even among the men who stay, many have withdrawn, some into alcohol, some into isolation. some into a kind of emotional unavailability that makes them present in body but absent in spirit. In a society still shaped by Soviet-era masculinity, stoic, tough, unfeeling, many Lithuanian men struggle to express emotion, to communicate, to be vulnerable. Feelings are weak, tears are shameful. Asking for help is failure. And in a modern dating landscape that requires emotional intelligence and openness, this leaves many women feeling like they're reaching for something that isn't there, like they're speaking a language their partners never learned. The result is a generation of women surrounded by absence, not just physical absence, but emotional absence too. And that kind of loneliness doesn't announce itself. It just settles in, quietly, like frost on a window. Here's where it gets complicated. Lithuanian women aren't struggling, at least not in the traditional sense. They're some of the most educated women in Europe. They dominate universities. They run businesses. They work in tech, in law, in medicine, in finance. Walk into a corporate office in Vilnius and you'll likely see a female manager, a female HR lead, a female team guiding operations. The new face of professional Lithuania is often a woman in her 30s, fluent in 3 languages, confident, self-reliant, and ambitious. She might own her own flat, drive a decent car, spend summers in Italy or Spain, and still send money home to help her parents. In many ways, Lithuania is a place where women thrive. They're independent, capable, and increasingly visible in public life. They don't need men to survive financially. They earn their own money, buy their own apartments, and make their own decisions. They travel, they invest, they build careers that matter, and they do it all in a country that 30 years ago was still shaking off the dust of Soviet rule, a society where independence, especially for women, was rare. But here's the paradox. Success doesn't cure loneliness. In fact, in some ways, it makes it worse. Because as women become more educated, more financially stable, and more selective, the pool of compatible partners shrinks even further. The men who remain often don't match their ambition, their education, or their expectations. It's not about being picky. It's about wanting a partner who sees you as an equal, not a threat. Someone who contributes emotionally, intellectually, and practically to a shared life. And in a country where traditional gender roles still linger, where men are expected to be providers and women are expected to be nurturing the modern, independent woman can feel like a challenge to the system. Too successful to be feminine, too ambitious to be easy, too confident to fit the mold. Some men respond with insecurity, others with avoidance, retreating further into the comfort of old norms rather than learning to meet women halfway. So the women adapt. They date less seriously. They focus on careers. They travel, build friend groups, and invest in hobbies. They create full lives, rich, textured, meaningful lives. They go to yoga retreats in Bali, to business conferences in Berlin, to art residencies in Copenhagen. They learn to fill their own calendars. But at night, when the apartment is quiet and the phone doesn't ring, the question lingers. Is this all there is? It's not that they're desperate, it's that they're human. And humans are wired for connection, for intimacy, for the feeling that someone sees you, knows you, chooses you. No amount of professional success can replace that. What's more, Lithuanian culture still places enormous emphasis on family. It's Catholic, traditional, deeply invested in the idea that a complete life includes marriage and children. Grandparents ask when you'll get married. Friends compare children. Holidays revolve around couples and families, and being single, especially as you move into your 30s and 40s, begins to feel like a social failure. The irony is that the very progress that gave women freedom has also isolated them. The pressure is subtle but relentless. It's in the way relatives phrase questions, in the way married friends slowly stop inviting you to couple-focused events, in the way society still, quietly, treats single women as incomplete. And it turns loneliness into something more than just an emotion. It becomes an identity, a status, a quiet, invisible wound that never fully heals, no matter how brightly the rest of your life shines. Loneliness in Lithuania doesn't look like isolation. It looks like crowded cafes where women sit with friends, laughing over coffee. It looks like active social media profiles full of travel photos and celebrations. It looks like full calendars and busy weekends. But beneath the surface, there's a quiet ache, the kind that doesn't show up in photos or get shared in conversations. Because admitting loneliness, especially romantic loneliness, feels like admitting failure, like something is wrong with you, rather than the situation. So women stay silent. They don't complain. They adapt. They normalize. They tell themselves it's fine, that they're fine, that maybe this is just how life is now. And in doing so, they carry the weight alone. The silence is cultural too. Lithuania is a reserved society. Emotions aren't displayed openly. Struggles aren't shared publicly. There's a stoicism here, inherited from Soviet times, that treats vulnerability as weakness. Even among close friends, the deeper feelings often go unspoken. But silence doesn't make the loneliness go away. It just makes it invisible. And that invisibility allows it to grow, unchecked, until it becomes part of the landscape. Just another fact of life in a country where women have everything except the one thing they can't create on their own: partnership. There are online forums where Lithuanian women gather anonymously to share their experiences. They talk about the frustration of dating men who don't communicate, the exhaustion of always being the one to initiate, to plan, to care, the sadness of watching friends move abroad in search of better relationship prospects. They talk about guilt too, the guilt of feeling ungrateful when their lives are objectively good, the guilt of wanting more when so many have less, the guilt of feeling lonely in a world that tells them they should be empowered, independent, and complete on their own. And in those forums, in those quiet digital spaces, a pattern emerges. They're not alone in feeling alone. The loneliness is collective, shared, a silent epidemic that touches nearly every woman who dares to hope for more than just survival. It's easy to make this story only about women, but the men who remain in Lithuania are struggling too, just in different ways, with fewer words to describe it. Many of the men who stayed are the ones who couldn't leave, the ones tied to family obligations, to aging parents, to land, to tradition, or the ones who tried to leave and came back broken, unable to adjust, unable to compete in a globalized economy that demands skills they were never taught. And then there are the men who are simply lost to alcohol, lost to depression, lost to a kind of quiet desperation that doesn't ask for help because asking for help isn't what men are supposed to do. In Lithuania, male suicide rates are among the highest in Europe. It's a crisis that runs parallel to the loneliness epidemic among women, but it's even less discussed. Because while women's loneliness is seen as sad, men's suffering is often invisible. They suffer in silence, and they die in silence. The result is a tragic irony. Women are lonely because there aren't enough emotionally available men, and men are dying because they've been taught that emotional availability is weakness. Both sides are trapped in a system that doesn't serve either of them. Some men do try. They download dating apps, they show up to social events, they attempt to connect. But often, they're met with disappointment. Women want conversation, emotional depth, and partnership. And many men raised in a culture that didn't teach them how to do those things simply don't know how. It's not that they're bad people, it's that they're products of a culture that broke something fundamental in how men and women relate to each other. And now, both sides are paying the price. There's no villain in this story, just systems, histories, and wounds that nobody knows how to heal. Loneliness in Lithuania has a geography. It's worse in the smaller towns and rural areas, where young people have fled to cities or abroad, leaving behind an aging population. Villages that once thrived are now filled with elderly women living alone, their children scattered across Europe, their husbands long buried. In cities like Vilnius, Kaunas, and Klaipėda, the loneliness is different but no less real. Here, it's not absence that defines it, it's proximity without connection. You can be surrounded by people and still feel utterly alone. The dating apps are active, but many women describe them as soul-crushing. The same profiles cycling endlessly, men who don't respond or who respond with one-word answers, dates that lead nowhere, conversations that fizzle before they begin. And then there's the expat factor. As Lithuania's cities become more international, many Lithuanian women find themselves dating foreign men from Western Europe, from the US, from other parts of the world who came for work or travel and stayed. These relationships can work, but they also highlight what's missing locally. Men who communicate, who invest emotionally, who see partnership as collaboration rather than obligation. Some women leave. They move to the UK, to Germany, to Scandinavia, hoping that a change of scenery will change their prospects. And for some, it does. They find partners abroad, build families, and never look back. But others stay, either by choice or by circumstance. They stay because their families are here, because their careers are here, because this is home. And they learn to live with the quiet ache of unmet longing. There's a future many Lithuanian women were promised, implicitly, by the culture they grew up in. A future where you go to school, build a career, meet someone, fall in love, get married, have children. The script is simple, linear, achievable. But for more and more women, that script is breaking down. Not because they failed to follow it, but because the conditions for it no longer exist. The men aren't there, or they're there but unavailable emotionally, physically, or both. The traditional markers of adulthood, partnership, marriage, children are slipping further out of reach, not because women don't want them, but because the math simply doesn't work. And so a new kind of life emerges, one that wasn't planned but must be lived anyway. A life where you build meaning outside of partnership, where you define success on your own terms, where you find connection in friendships, in work, in community, in things that don't require a man to validate them. This adaptation is powerful. It's resilient, but it's also not what most women envisioned. And there's a grief in that, a quiet mourning for the life that could have been, should have been, but isn't. Some women embrace this new life fully. They travel solo, they buy homes on their own, they build careers that fulfill them, they create chosen families with friends, and in many ways, they thrive. But even in thriving, there's a shadow, the knowledge that they didn't choose this path so much as it was chosen for them, by history, by demographics, by forces beyond their control. The younger generation watches this unfold and draws their own conclusions. Some decide not to wait. They leave Lithuania earlier, seeking opportunities and relationships elsewhere. Others adjust their expectations, accepting that partnership may not be part of their story. And some hold on to hope. They keep swiping, keep meeting people, keep believing that somewhere in this country of vanishing men, there's one who stayed, who's present, who's ready. That hope is both beautiful and heartbreaking, because for many, the math will never work out. Lithuania is not unique. The loneliness crisis, the demographic imbalance, the emotional disconnection, all of these are playing out in different forms across the world. In Japan, where herbivore men withdraw from dating entirely. In South Korea, where marriage rates plummet. In parts of rural America, where men vanish into opioid addiction and economic despair. But Lithuania distills the crisis into something stark and undeniable. A place where the numbers are so skewed, the patterns so clear, that they can't be ignored or explained away. It reveals what happens when gender roles clash with modern realities, when tradition meets progress and neither side knows how to compromise. When men and women both suffer, but in parallel rather than together. And it asks a question that goes far beyond Lithuania. What do we owe each other? What does connection require? And how do we build it when the systems we inherited were never designed to support it? There are no easy answers. Lithuania won't solve its demographic crisis overnight. The men who left won't return. The men who died won't come back. And the emotional patterns carved by decades of hardship won't dissolve quickly. But awareness is a start. Naming the loneliness, talking about it, refusing to let it remain invisible. Because the more it stays hidden, the more it festers. Some countries are beginning to address similar issues. Programs that teach emotional literacy to boys, mental health initiatives that destigmatize therapy for men, economic policies that keep young people from having to choose between their homeland and their survival. But these solutions take time. And for the women living through this crisis now, time feels like something they're running out of. Every year that passes, the pool shrinks further. The hope dims a little more. Yet they continue. They build lives worth living, even if those lives look different than planned. They find meaning in unexpected places. They support each other, even when they can't solve each other's loneliness. And maybe that's the most remarkable thing about Lithuanian women. Not that they're lonely, but that they refuse to let loneliness define them. They keep going. They keep hoping. They keep building. Lithuania is a country of contrasts. Ancient forests and modern tech hubs. Deep Catholic tradition and growing secularism. Beauty and hardship woven together so tightly that they're impossible to separate. And in the lives of its women, those contrasts are most visible. Educated but lonely, successful but isolated, empowered in public, aching in private. They didn't create this situation, they inherited it, but they're the ones left to navigate it, to survive it, to somehow build meaning within it. Some will find love, some will leave, some will build lives so full and rich that partnership becomes secondary. And some will spend their lives wondering what might have been if only the numbers had been different. Lithuania forces you to confront an uncomfortable truth, that you can do everything right and still end up alone. that loneliness isn't always a personal failure, sometimes it's a systemic one. And maybe that's the most important takeaway. Not that Lithuania is broken, but that it's honest. It doesn't hide its wounds. It doesn't pretend the numbers don't matter. It simply exists, complicated and contradictory, like all of us. The women of Lithuania didn't ask to become symbols of a global crisis. They're just living their lives, trying to find connection in a country where connection has become the scarcest resource. They're not victims waiting to be saved. They're survivors, building futures out of circumstances they didn't choose. Every day, they carry quiet strength hidden beneath graceful, determined smiles. And their story matters because it's not just their story. It's a warning, a preview of what happens when societies prioritize everything except the human need for connection. When economic growth matters more than emotional health. When numbers on spreadsheets take precedence over the relationships that give life meaning. What do you think? Could you live in a place where the odds are against you from the start? Let us know in the comments. And if this story made you think differently, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Because at the end of the day, the loneliest places aren't always the emptiest. Sometimes, they're the ones that look perfect from the outside.